So this is the beginning of a long healing period because eclipses happen and then they happen in pairs, so a solar and a lunar. And then 6 months later, there'll be another solar eclipse and another lunar eclipse. So this is kind of the beginning of this 6-month journey you're about to be on. And it's also, it's part of the big picture of your life as well. And this one is about focusing on nurturing and beginning a really deeply healing journey.
Hello, and welcome back to Seek the Joy podcast. Happy Seek the Joy Tuesday. I'm your host, Sydney Weiss. And in this week's new episode, we are breaking down the energy forecast for summer 2019. I'm talking about what's going on astrologically, what's happening in the cosmos between the solar eclipse that's happening on July 2nd, the lunar eclipse on July 16th. Mercury is in retrograde in between, and oh my God, there's just so much going on, and it's so fascinating, and it's so interesting, and it all impacts us differently because our charts are so different. And so when I caught a glimpse of what was going on in the cosmos, astrologically, energetically this summer, I was like, we've got to do a podcast episode about this because I am super fascinated and interested and love astrology, and any opportunity I have to talk about it, any opportunity I have to learn more about it, I totally take it. So I reached out to the really intuitive and passionate and knowledgeable astrologer, Lauren Hansen. She's the voice behind the Instagram account, Astro Betch. And so I reached out to her and I was like, do you want to come on the podcast and talk about what's happening this summer? And she was like, hell yeah, I would. So we put this together so quickly, and I'm so grateful. And it just was so much fun to sit down with Lauren and really break down the energy forecast for the summer between eclipse season and Cancer and Leo and Mercury in retrograde and what it all means for us. Lauren really shares what we can expect from this season, what we need to know, and how it really impacts your chart. And Lauren even walks us through how you can look at your chart to figure all of this out. We also take a peek at my chart, and that was so much fun too. Plus, Lauren shares where's a really great place to start if you're brand new to astrology, from looking at your sun sign to your rising sign to your moon sign to the houses. There's just so much to explore. Plus, Lauren shares with us how astrology found her, the impact that it's had on her life, her biggest dreams, and honestly, just so much more. This week's episode was so much fun to record, and I want to jump into it right away because there is so much wisdom and knowledge and information that's shared. And so after you tune in to this week's new episode, join the conversation on our social media pages. We are at Seek the Joy Podcast everywhere. And whether this is your first time tuning in to Seek the Joy Podcast or your 100th time, just thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Make sure to hit that subscribe button on Apple Podcasts or really wherever it is that you listen to podcasts, and leave us a rating and review. And when you do, make sure to take a screenshot of that review, send it to sydney@seekthejoypodcast.com. I will send you our new and improved guide for infusing more joy into your life. It's such a great way for us to connect to outside of the show, and ratings and reviews really help us get seen by new people and show people what Seek the Joy podcast is all about. So I would be so grateful. And if you know anybody that would love this episode or love this podcast, hit the share button, send it to them. There is so much wisdom and so much goodness in this week's new episode. I just want everyone to hear it because when there's so much going on in the sky, we often don't know how it's going to impact us. And when we start to learn about it, it is a total game changer. All right, guys, that's it. The summer eclipse season is a really profound period of healing and growth and transformation. And I had learned so much from what Lauren shared, and I am so grateful, and I cannot wait for you guys to hear this one. So without further ado, here is my conversation with astrologer Lauren Hansen.
Well, I'm a Leo, so my sun is in Leo, all about entertaining people, all about having a great time, leisure, creativity. it's really the sign of that childlike sense of wonderment, which is why Leo also rules children, actually.
Really?
And
That's
then,
so cool.
Yeah. Leo can have a bit of a temper because it tends to be an egotistical sign. Like that's a big challenge for Leos. They really need to learn to check their ego at the door.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of clashes with my moon sign, which is in Scorpio. And a lot of people hear Scorpio and are like, oh, the bitch of the zodiac.
People hear Scorpio and they run. Like they run the other direction.
People are so upset. They're like, oh, that dramatic, dark, mysterious, but like bitchy sign. And it's so funny.
Because your moon sign, that governs your emotions, right? And how you feel. And so, but then your rising sign, isn't that how other people perceive you? So what is your rising sign?
So my rising sign is Sagittarius. So that's another fire sign like Leo.
Yeah.
So I have a lot of fire going on. Sagittarius is, most people kind of love or hate Sagittarius when they meet them typically because they're a very blunt sign and they have to learn to like not always share, which I certainly had to learn, especially with Leo being so, vocal and outward about expressing themselves. But it's a really truth-seeking sign, and it's about, especially as Sag grows up, whether it's sun or rising or moon, they really learn. They're all about knowledge and philosophy and trying to basically find the truth. Mm-hmm. And that actually works really well with my moon sign because Scorpio is the other truth-seeking sign. Those are the two that are all about kind of getting to the bottom of things. Scorpio dives really deep into the darkness. So that's why it rules psychology and investigation and everybody's shadow and intimacy. So it really goes deep and dark. So a lot of like detectives or psychologists will be, because they're not scared to find out what the truth is, no matter how ugly it is.
So interesting. And the more you just shared that about your three signs, or not your three signs, but the three signs that we often think about when we talk about astrology and we talk about our natal charts, it makes a lot of sense because it's all about knowledge. It's all about going deeper. And that's what you're doing with astrology. And so what brought you to astrology in the first place? What about it excited you? Did you like come across it and you were like, oh, this is my jam. This is my thing?
It's pretty interesting. I kind of love how astrology found me in a way. It's weird. So when I was about 11 years old, my dad sent me to Maui for a couple weeks to spend time with one of his oldest friends who it's so weird because she's a healer and a psychic for real. I witnessed so much weird stuff when I was with her. She's a powerful, powerful woman. Like this woman literally got so angry one day. Her husband was like, Dawn, calm down, calm down. You're going to do it again. And I was like, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? Literally half the power went out in the island of Maui when she got really upset. It was nuts.
Wow.
Yeah, it was so crazy. It was so crazy. She's like, oh, sorry. That's only happened once before. But anyway, she was nuts. And
no big deal. I just like knocked out the power grid. But anyway, we'll go back to dinner now. That's wild.
It was so wild. But so she wasn't able to have kids. And she really loved me. So I went and spent these couple of weeks with her just for fun. She kind of mothered me in a way to just, really, she just spoiled me. And she was the one to introduce me to astrology because obviously she was doing work in the spiritual realm. And it wasn't really her jam, but she had this weird feeling that I'd really like it. And obviously she was correct.
Yeah.
So that's how I was introduced to it. So I kind of dabbled, but I always had this fear I was going to become that crazy astrology lady. And so
interesting.
It took a long time. It took basically until 2 years ago. I finally was like, all right. And I really have my ex-boyfriend to thank because he was like, I'm done listening to you talk about how much you love this and you don't go into it. Here's a bunch of books.
Yeah. So I love that because first of all, I mean, how cool that you had that opportunity to spend some time with her. And that is a story you'll tell for the rest of your life. I mean, wild is the definition of that moment for you. But so I think, often there are these perceptions associated with tools like astrology, and it's associated with things that people are kind of freaked out by, but it's not any of those things. Astrology is really a tool, at least in my opinion, that will allow you to gain a deeper understanding of you and who you are, what your life path is in this lifetime, how you can sort of harness those energies associated with your star sign, rising, moon, your north and south node, which to me in particular is the most fascinating thing ever.
For sure.
And learn more about it and see the resonance for yourself. And then it's all about knowledge. It's all about gaining that deeper sense of understanding. I love that this is how it found you. I love that you finally were like, all right, this is my thing.
Yeah.
Like, I can't push back against it anymore. I've got to like fully embrace it. And so the last 2 years, have you just been studying it nonstop? What has that been like?
I mean, it's quite the obsession for me. Yeah. Yeah. Even before 2 years ago, I was starting to get obsessed just reading articles online over and over, getting, all my best friends' birth information, being like, oh, look, this is why we're friends. This is how we get along, looking at everything. And then I was working a 9 to 5 in this office doing social media and SEO stuff. And I just became the astrologer for the whole office. I was like, everybody give me your birth times.
I love that.
It was so fun.
This is kind of what has happened to me at work too, is like we talk about astrology a lot. And then I have one friend at work and she's the best. And she'll be like, oh yeah, Sydney knows everything about this. Go talk to her. She'll talk to you about your Saturn return and what to expect and what house it's in. And I'm like, what? I don't know if I know that much, but you kind of, when you begin to share
embrace it.
Yeah, but when you begin to share the stuff that you love and you're passionate about, I mean, people see that light in you and they see how it excites you. And then, it's like, all right, embrace it. Just like you said, I love that. I love that you just have really dove deep into this.
Yeah. And I'm not surprised you're into it because it's kind of a typical Aquarius thing to be very open to this. Mm-hmm. I love it.
Yeah.
I love Aquarius. Aquarius is opposite Leo, girl.
I know. I was going to say.
Along.
Really? Because I've heard we don't get along. Because Aquarians are all about the community, lifting people up. And often I think the perception of Leo is like the I. It's more of a self-invested sign. I could be wrong. I could be wrong.
You're totally, because what you're talking about is how there's kind of a dark side and a light side to every sign.
Okay.
And with Aquarius, the light side is that they connect with the collective. So that's what you're talking about. You're kind of talking about the dark side of Leo, which is that they can be very egotistical, as I was mentioning before, and really into themselves. But the truth is the light side of Leo is they're extremely loyal. They're all about their brood and getting along with, honestly, everybody. So that's awesome. Because they're entertainers, right? So they're happy. Even they can be entertainers and not be super into themselves. Ooh. So that's a way that they can really connect with everybody. Yeah. And because honestly, the dark side of Aquarius is that, they might want to connect with the collective, but they can get so caught up in just having ideas. They never take action.
Interesting.
And they're detached emotionally sometimes. So they don't really connect one-on-one. That's where Leo's really good at connecting a little bit more one-on-one.
Fascinating, because I love what you shared, that there's a light and a dark side to every sign, and how first of all, I think it's about what you look at, and it's important to look at the dark side too, and embrace it and see where you want to kind of elevate yourself and challenge yourself to grow beyond that, which has a lot to do with what's coming up this summer too, which we'll get into in a minute. But interesting what you shared about Aquarius and how they have a lot of ideas and they don't act on them. My problem is I have a lot of ideas and I often act on too many of them at one time. And I think that goes to show too that it's not just your star sign or your sun sign. Like, it's about the collective energy of your chart and the way the different signs and what planets and what house they're in. And oftentimes people only look at that sun sign and they don't look at the moon and the rising sign. And so what should people be looking at when they first kind of dive into astrology? Should they be looking at those three kind of main touch points? Where is a good place to start? Yeah,
I completely agree with you. I think focusing on your star, your moon, and your rising is really a fabulous idea, because at first astrology can be really complex and complicated, and you can get really excited looking at everything because you have Venus, which explains your relationship with money and how you show affection. You also have Mars, which is about your drive, your ambition, including your sex drive, actually. And Mercury is how you process thoughts and your style of communication. So, of course, those are also important parts. When you're starting off, I really suggest diving deep into your sun sign, because your sun sign is your personality. It's supposed to be your personality, but there are other aspects in your chart that can really weaken it. Because we all know those people who are like, I don't believe in astrology because every time I read something, it says my sun, based off my sun, it's totally off. It's like there are some people whose sun sign are in one thing and then everything else is in a completely different sign. And that really switches things up. You're like, your sun is almost weakened and you can have other planets opposing your sun that can weaken it as well. There's so many things that go on, but your sun sign does have to do with your identity. And I like to think of it this way, and it makes it simple. It's the best way you shine. So when you tap into that part of you, you can really shine that way. So even people whose charts their suns are weakened, part of their life's journey is to understand how to work with that and realize they do shine best that way. Yeah. So it's your basic identity, right? Yeah. And it's your consciousness, where your moon is your subconscious. It's your deep emotional, it's your deep emotions, and it's what really drives your needs as opposed to your wants. Your sun sign is your wants. Your moon sign is your needs. They're these things that you can't deny. And a lot of people were actually more like their moon sign when they were younger. Because when you're young, you're so tapped into your subconscious and your emotional needs. Of course, everybody reacts so quickly when they're little. Like, I want that. I need that. I don't like this. That's your moon sign. It's your deep emotions that are coming out. Yeah. And then you have your rising sign, which you explained so perfectly earlier, which is how you come off to other people, for sure. And it's kind of your invisible mask, I like to say, because it's something that you just have on. You don't consciously put this thing on, but it's what you have on, not even as protection, but it's just this energy you give off immediately, especially when you enter a new environment or you're meeting new people. And it's how you project yourself to the world. Interesting. You know? Yeah. And that's why when you meet someone, they can be one way. And then all of a sudden, you meet somebody at a party and they're like, oh, they're super crazy. They're super fun. They're saying hi to everybody at the party. They're probably a rising fire sign or an air sign, because those are the extroverts. Yeah. And then you sit down with them, you're having a drink, and all of a sudden you're getting really intimate with them. They're a little quiet, and you're like, oh, you're not how I thought you were when you first walked into the room. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Yeah, that's really interesting. Okay, and so you brought up fire signs. What are the earth signs, air signs, fire signs, and water signs, just so people know? Okay, I got you. Basically, Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius. Those are the fire signs. Okay. People tend to understand those a little more easily because fire signs make themselves so known. It's all like, no surprise that that's fire. And then our earth signs are Taurus, Virgo, Capricorn. Those are all about, they're grounded, focused, more into routine, all that good stuff. Yeah. Gemini is air. Libra is air, and so is Aquarius. Those are the idea people, also extroverts, just like fire. And then our water signs are Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces, our little emotional babies. Yeah. Oh, I love that. And that's interesting. Like, for example, with me, I'm an Aquarius sun sign, star sign, however you want to refer to it. But I have a ton of, and that's an air sign. I have a ton of earth in my chart. Like, so much earth. That's much why you Capricorn. Put your ideas. That's why you put your ideas into action, girl. Yeah. And my moon sign is in Taurus, and I'm a Cancer rising, which is that emotional part. It's very nurturing. It's very protective. So it's interesting when you begin to learn a little bit more beyond that daily horoscope. You start to see, okay, that's why I am this way. That's how I connect those dots. So, should we dive in to a little bit of the energy for the summer? Because let's do it. It is intense, but I think in a really good and positive way. Totally. Yeah. And so it's a really powerful time. It starts on Tuesday, July 2nd. And so where should we start? Because I'm super excited about it. I think it's going to be a really transformational, powerful time for people. And I'm excited to break it down. So let's start with this. What are eclipses? What do they mean? And we'll dive in from there. Well, okay. First and foremost, it's important to understand, you hear solar eclipse, right? And then you hear lunar eclipse. Yeah. And people sometimes don't even realize solar or lunar is in front of it. Who knows what the difference is? Who cares? But it's important. So a solar eclipse is a highly charged new moon. So solar, new moon. Okay. And a lunar eclipse is a highly charged full moon. So lunar, full moon. Okay. Okay. So a new moon is when the moon and the sun are in the same sign. Okay. Right? So what's coming up first on July 2nd is a solar eclipse or a new moon eclipse, now that we've learned, right? That's when the sun and the moon are in the same sign. Because it's an eclipse, that means it's aligned with the true north node. And I'll get into explaining the nodes in a little bit, but let's stick to the basics for a second.
Yeah.
When the sun and the moon are in the same sign, this is it's a great time for clarity, because the sun represents our consciousness and the moon is our subconscious. And they're kind of like on the same team during a new moon, right? Because they're in one sign together. So it's like you consciously and subconsciously want the same stuff. Mm-hmm. And it really brings a lot of clarity, and you're lacking this internal emotional conflict that you get during full moons. Because during a full moon, the sun is in one sign and the moon is in the opposite sign. So they're opposing each other. It's kind of like a little face off.
Yeah.
So your subconscious is wanting whatever sign the moon is in, to satisfy that sign, whatever that sign's needs are. But then you consciously want whatever sign the sun is in. So that's why full moons are about balance. They're this emotional culmination. They're where you realize, okay, I do want to move on to new things, but I have to end something. I should celebrate whatever I've finished. And I'm really emotional right now. And I'm realizing I need to balance things in my life. That's the energy of a full moon. And during a new moon, there's that clarity, which is why people are always told to like manifest a lot on new moons.
Yeah.
And I just want to pop in here. You can manifest at any time, at any place.
100%.
Do whatever you want.
Yeah.
I think people can get really caught up in, I got to do this ritual on this day. The moon is the most potent. And I agree. When it's potent, yes, that is the best time.
Yeah.
But you can manifest whenever the hell you want to manifest. I think that's important.
True. But
right?
I think it's also about being able to harness or leverage the energy that's kind of present at that moment. And I think that's totally why people emphasize like on the new moon and everything else in between. But I love your explanation. That makes a lot of sense to me. And so July 2nd, this coming Tuesday, is our first eclipse, and it's in the new moon, like you shared, because it's a solar. Do you like how I'm like, going backward? I'm like getting the hang of this. It's a solar eclipse.
It's good. Yeah.
And so it's in Cancer, right? Because we're still in Cancer season. And so what does this mean for people having the solar eclipse in Cancer? Break it all down.
Okay, I'm going to break it all down. First, I'm just going to tell you, this has to do with the true north node and the south node, which I know you're obsessed with. So
oh my God. Can I just I'm just going to give a small anecdote. People are going to be like, Sydney is nuts. But I am so fascinated by the north and south node, because your south node is your karma. It's what you brought in with you in this lifetime. And your north node is what you're moving towards throughout the course of your life. And so when we have events like these eclipses, it helps to sort of facilitate that movement towards the north node. So for me, my south node is in Cancer. What's comfortable for me, what's karma for me, is being within the home. It's nurturing, it's protective, it's that maternal energy. I'm moving towards Capricorn, which is more paternal. It's about being out in the world. It's about sharing who you are. It's about like being more seen. And so I'm working on it. This podcast has helped me, and I didn't even realize that in the course of starting the show and everything else in between. But so for me, I have spent so much time trying to understand this and study this. And so I'm fascinated, but that was a small tangent. So if anybody, by the way, if you're interested in figuring out what your south and your north node is, you can look at your natal chart, your birth chart, and it often will only tell you your north node. They don't always tell you what your south node is, but it's exactly what is opposite of the chart. So like if your north node is in Leo, your south is in Aquarius, right? And if it's north in Cancer, your south is in Capricorn. So it's whatever is the opposite. And a really good book, if anyone is interested, it's called Astrology for the Soul, I think is what it's called. I'm like Googling it right now. I don't want to tell. I don't want to tell people. Astrology for the Soul by Jan Spiller. And I literally recommend it to every single person I ever talk to about astrology. So anyway, small tangent. I'm super obsessed with the north and the south nodes because I think it tells us so much more about who we are and what we're here to do and what we're here to ascend into. And the eclipses play a huge role in that. So anyway, I digress. Go ahead.
No, it's all good.
Interrupted you.
No, you're fine. No, it's great. I love how excited you are about it. And I just want to, if you guys are looking up your north and south node, and maybe you've looked at this too, Sydney. Have you looked at the houses that your North and South Node are in?
Yes, but I cannot remember what it is because the houses also play a huge role. And so
they play a bigger role, honestly, because the nodes take about a year and a half to go through a sign.
That's right.
You and everybody born around the same time as you all have this North Node and South Node in the same sign, and you're obviously not all to live the exact same path. Not that one aspect in a chart means that. But when you put on top of it what house it's in, it really opens the floodgates.
And every house is different.
I'll talk to you about years after this because
Okay, we'll talk more. But like there are 12 houses total, right?
Mm-hmm. Because there are 12 signs. Yeah,
we'll include all that info in the show notes because honestly, we could talk about it forever and we would be here for 5 hours.
Yeah, so let's do summer energy.
Well, I know
we could talk about it forever.
Okay, so let's go into the energy of the summer. We start on Tuesday, July 2nd with this solar eclipse in Cancer. Right. What can people expect? What's going on?
Okay, this eclipse on July 2nd, it's an eclipse because the new moon is aligned with either the North Node or the South Node. Whenever a new moon or full moon is aligned with either the North Node or the South Node, that makes it an eclipse, right? Mm-hmm. And in this case, this new moon is associated with the North Node, and it's in Cancer, which is a cardinal sign, which means it's all about starting new stuff. Like it's a sign that's great at getting things going and beginning projects, beginning things. So this eclipse on July 2nd is so exciting because it's like the theme is like new times 100. Because this could have been a full moon with the South Node. I mean, it could have been all, a combination of stuff. But because it's a new moon, it's about new beginnings. Cancer is about new, and the North Node is about following your destiny, your higher purpose. You're moving forward, going on the correct path to kind of like your higher self. That's really what the North Node is all about. So it's really, really exciting. And having it in Cancer is why this is all about emotional security, because that is the basic theme of Cancer, right?
Yeah.
As opposed to its opposing sign, Capricorn, which we'll talk about because on July 16th, that's when we have the lunar eclipse that's in Capricorn. And in Capricorn is all about material security, right? So you can see how there are these opposites here, but they're both about security. So on July 2nd, it's about emotional security, and it really has to do with moving forward in your life and finding maybe some imbalances when it comes to your emotional security. It's very often about family and your roots, because Cancer is the mother of the zodiac. It's about your relationship with your family, with your home, the people in your home. But really focus on moving forward in your life by nurturing what your soul is yearning for. And that sounds so dramatic, but it's funny because we all eventually really start figuring out what does our soul really want when we start paying attention to, just what do we get so tired doing because we just don't give a shit about it?
Yeah.
Or where are we spending too much energy? Where are we feeling sucked? Look at how you nurture yourself too. Do you take care of yourself enough? I know a lot of people don't. For sure. And that could be anything. I mean, even if it's watching TV for an hour, I'm not about to say everybody needs to do yoga, at least once a week. Everybody needs to meditate. Not everybody's relaxation and nurturing of themselves is the same as everybody else, for sure.
And that's so important to remember, like our self-care, what we are attracted to, how we relax, how we get in the zone. Like it's all deeply personal, and it's about what works best for you. Totally.
Yeah. So those are the things that are really coming to light during this solar eclipse. It's all about nurturing, and we're gonna have some clarity. It's gonna be clear. Like I said, new moons bring clarity because this moon and the sun are in the same sign, wanting the same thing, and they are wanting to satisfy Cancer. They want to get through these family issues. They want to feel safe, and wants to feel safe in the home. Wants to nurture projects. It really wants to nurture people that wants to nurture. You're really getting tapped in to what you really want. And it's great. And this is a very healing eclipse as well. There are some other aspects going on. So this is the beginning of a long healing period, by the way, because eclipses happen, right? And then they happen in pairs. So a solar and a lunar. And then 6 months later, there'll be another solar eclipse and another lunar eclipse. So this is kind of the beginning of this 6-month journey you're about to be on. And it's also, it's part of the big picture of your life as well. It's not like, okay, whatever you change now, it's just that, then it goes back to normal in 6 months, or it changes it. Of course, other aspects of your life will change in 6 months, but you'll be focusing on something else. And this one is about focusing on nurturing and beginning a really deeply healing journey. So a lot of people might find a lot of healing in, talking to their family right now about issues that are coming up, or thinking about how their home really isn't where they want to live, and they really want to live somewhere else where they can heal. There's so many, different ways people can heal, but just know that that's present as well.
Yeah.
And the other aspects that are going on, I'm so excited about. There are all these other planets running around making aspects, which is complex to explain, honestly, and it's really not useful for right now. But to understand that your big dreams are really, really possible, and you're going to feel it. You're going to have this feeling like, wow, I can turn this into reality. And you're not going to give a shit if it's approved by other people. Of course, a part of you might. There might be a little bit of fear, but if there's this like confident, bold, rebellious kind of energy going on in the sky that's saying, follow your big dreams, nurture whatever you want to nurture, and get ready to let go of whatever society expects of you, what you thought you needed to do, what you thought your status should be in the world. It feels lighter. It feels kind of like, you're just thinking about you right now. And it's awesome.
So I love this. And so because I'm all about, like, in my mind, the way I process is like wrapping things up in a bow, kind of like summarizing it. So tell me if this is what you've been saying, because I just want to make sure I'm understanding too. Basically, this first eclipse is a solar eclipse. It's a new moon, July 2nd on Tuesday. I'm going to just keep saying July 2nd.
Yeah, July 2nd, July 2nd.
And it's in Cancer, which is all about nurturing and renewal and going within. And so it's about looking at the areas within ourselves that really need that nurturing and that really need that renewal, so that we can touch base with ourselves and who we are and who we want to be and what our soul is really calling out for, so that throughout the next 30 days, whatever it is, and then of these eclipses, and then moving into the 6 months that are coming at us, it's about then having the courage to step forward and kind of proclaim your dreams, right? And share them and go after them and know that they're here for you. Is that kind of like, okay.
Hell yeah, girl.
Because that sounds
so
fantastic. I mean, that sounds amazing. Because we're also going to be stepping into Leo season. And Leo, we talked a little bit about before, but that lion, that roar, like being bold with sharing yourself. But you have to go within first. You have to nurture first before you can really roar. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
anyway,
yeah. And we'll talk more about
awesome.
Leo. Yeah, we'll go over the Mercury retrograde in a moment here, because it's happening.
It's coming in a week.
Yeah, it's happening right around that lunar eclipse. It's perfect timing. So really, everybody hang the hell on to your awesome feelings during this solar eclipse, because once the lunar eclipse comes, this is when the challenges and the emotions and all these things kind of arise. Fears start bubbling up. So, really figure out what you want to nurture, maybe write it down, start manifesting shit for yourself, start really focusing on that, because once the lunar eclipse hits, it's going to feel a lot heavier and more challenged, and it's challenging you to stay the course. It's like, okay, remember what you realized during the solar eclipse. Don't let that be some brief moment where you're like, oh, for a second, I thought my dreams could come true. It's like, no, hold on to that. Hold on to that, because there might be challenges of authority. There could be some secrets coming out. Basically, a lot's going on with Pluto.
Interesting.
And Pluto is aligned with this lunar eclipse on July 16th, and it's bringing up power struggles. We might see, especially globally, abuses of power, people of power falling, a lot coming out. Some dark shadow shit is going on. And so it's up to you to really stay the course. That's really a big idea for the lunar eclipse that's on the 16th. So, okay, so you summarized the solar eclipse very well. Totally correct. I love how you said that. You did a great job. So before we get all wah, it's going to be intense and emotional and dark, just know the energy on the lunar eclipse is still really similar to the solar eclipse, in that your big dreams are still being supported. It's Neptune and Jupiter that are working together, in case anybody's curious. You're still ready to put your ideas into action because Leo has Mercury and Mars in it. And Mercury's all about the way you process your thoughts and communicate. Mars is that, I like to say it's your chutzpah planet.
Yes.
You can tell I'm half Jewish.
Ah.
And so it's your chutzpah planet. It's like what gets you going. It ignites you. It's drive, right? And so those are in Leo. And those are, Leo is all about courage and saying what needs to be said and going for it. So that's great. So that's still going on. And also there's, Uranus is aspecting too. And Uranus is the planet it's the rebel planet of revolution and change. And basically I like to say it's I don't give a fuck planet. It really doesn't care. It just wants things to change and, flip the script on everything. Okay. So that's still going on. But the difference is that this is a full moon, right? Mm-hmm. So as we discussed before, this is when the moon will be in Capricorn and the sun will be in Cancer still. So you're consciously still wanting to satisfy those Cancer parts of your life, which is great because that's what the North Node is trying to say. Hey, don't forget about nurturing yourself, nurturing what you want to nurture. But then you have this deep emotional need to also satisfy what Capricorn wants. And Capricorn is all about status and career and climbing the ladder and material gains, right? So that's where you're going to feel this push and this pull. And because the moon is aligned with this South Node, which, like you mentioned before, is about karmic past. It's about past patterns. And it's not really a terrible thing. I think, just so you know, too, when you're looking at your own chart and where this South Node is, don't think of it as a full negative, like, oh, these are patterns you want to completely let go of and you don't want to associate with them anymore. No, not at all.
Yeah.
They work in your favor as well. They're things you're naturally good at, right? So, still pay attention to that, but just know you don't need to work so hard. You need to work on what's opposing. That's where your soul will be taken to a new level where you're going to experience life differently. You don't want to just keep doing the same shit every lifetime. And you do not need to believe in reincarnation to believe in astrology, FYI.
Totally. And by the way, I think it's really interesting because it ties into what we were saying earlier about a light side and a dark side of a sign. I think it's about knowing where your comfort level is, knowing what comes naturally to you with the South Node, but not viewing it like you just shared as a negative. I view all the qualities of my Cancer South Node as I really hold it in high esteem, if that makes sense. I'm like, wow,
should, yeah.
This is what's comfortable for me. And it makes a lot of sense. And I see it in my day-to-day life. But how can I challenge myself? How can I push myself to grow rather than staying in that comfort zone? That's kind of the way I look at it. And I'm a big proponent of looking at the positives with astrology and not allowing myself to sit in fear of what something of a quote unquote negative quality. Does that make sense? So
that totally makes
because
sense,
I think it's really easy to find astrologers or find information online or listen to information on podcasts that's the doom and gloom, which I'm really not here for. If you haven't noticed. I think it's really important to know both ends and both sides, but it's all about perspective.
It really is. It's so funny to me too when people first get into astrology or I'll ask to do somebody's chart and I'll do it and they'll be like, am I doomed? I'm like, what? It is so funny that's the first thing people think sometimes. I'm like, nobody is doomed.
No, you're not
Nobody's doomed. Relax. No. I mean, I've seen some pretty difficult charts.
Yeah, but even when you have a difficult chart, when we say difficult chart, it's about planets clashing, what houses some things are in, what's opposing right now in your chart. I mean, it's very intricate. It's very complex. And that's when I say to people, please go book a session with an astrologer because they'll break it down for you far better than the internet could ever do. I mean,
you could just be on the internet forever.
Yeah, but who knows even if what you're reading is accurate. Do you know what I mean? But I think,
that too.
But I think even when you have a quote unquote difficult chart, that path is a gift because it allows you to grow and change in ways that you wouldn't have otherwise. Because for me, the difficulties are stepping stones for who you are and who you're supposed to be. So I could go on and on about that, but anyway, I will get us back on track.
We can go on and on.
So the lunar eclipse is July 16th. It's in a couple of weeks, and it really sounds like we're building on the energy of this first solar eclipse, which is coming up. I think it's interesting that it's in Capricorn for the lunar eclipse, because Capricorn, I mean, it's an earth sign. It's all about grounding. It's all about focus. It's, I think, often right about stamina too. So
it's the hardest working sign of the zodiac. For sure.
So it sounds like you're taking everything that you've nurtured and renewed through the solar eclipse and keeping yourself on track despite what's going on in your life and grounding yourself in it and sort of staying true to yourself and who you are and what you want to be and what you want your dreams to be despite whatever else is going on. That's kind of what I'm taking from it.
Okay, yeah, you're on the right track there. So I was going to say, you mentioned fear earlier, like don't approach astrology with fear. Okay, fear is another big player in this too, because Capricorn, although it's a very accomplishing sign, very ambitious sign, it's the sign of reality, you know? That's why it's able to turn things into reality. So whatever it wants to do, it's like, okay, how do I turn this into a thing? And then I get money for it. It's not always just money, but they want to see it. They want to feel it. They want, you know,
like
they want
something tangible from, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. We said at the same time.
Oh my God, look at us.
Yeah. They don't like a bunch of, you know, whimsical ideas and not doing anything with them.
No, they want to see proof.
Right. So, but it is the sign of fear because it's the sign of reality, right? And when we look at the reality of our lives, that's where sometimes fear can creep up. You know, we have these magical ideas in our heads, and then when we don't see them in reality and we're like, oh, okay, you know, I'm just scared. This is going to be so much work putting it into the real world. I don't know. So that's what's going on here. So the moon is in Capricorn, right? And it's going to be aligned with the South Node, and it's going to be making us feel emotionally kind of linked to this fear that, you know, the reality and the structures that we have now, that you have now, the job you have, that maybe the relationship you're in, where you live, you're going to feel this emotional pull. Like, I gotta maybe hold on to this. And it depends on everybody, right? Because you have your own birth chart to look at. We can dive into that. But some of us are really going to feel this fear bubbling up. Like, I have this structure in my life, and I'm really going to fuck it up if I try to go for what I really want to nurture and what this Cancer part of me wants, right?
Yeah.
And it's also aligned with Pluto, which is why I was mentioning power, right? Power and authority kind of looming over you, and us seeing globally even powers falling. And Pluto is also about the deep psyche. So these fears that come out are a deep part of you. You might start having these thoughts that you've had since you were like 5. Like every time you were going to take a test, you're like, oh no, I'm stupid. I can't do this, whatever. Things that you like, thoughts, like dark thoughts that you have in your head that you've had for years and years and years and years and haven't really worked with, like practicing self-love. Listen to Sydney's last episode if you need help with self-love. That was really good.
Thank you.
It was really good about that. So, but yeah, it's deep. It's really deep. When Pluto is aligned with the moon, I mean, it is intense. It's really hard to separate yourself from your emotions. So that's why this is such a challenge. And I know because when I was born, the moon was aligned with Pluto. Yay.
Oh my gosh. So like this is going to impact people differently. And obviously we can't tell everybody how this is going to impact them. And so does it have a lot to do with if your sun, rising, moon is in these signs right now? Does it have a lot to do with where Pluto was in your chart where you were born? I mean, if someone were to pull up their natal chart right now, what should they be looking for just in terms of being able to gauge how this is going to all impact them? Okay,
so I'll keep it simple. So first of all, you pull up your chart and compare it with what's going on in the sky, which are called transits, by the way. So if you're on an astrology website, I use astro.com. I think it's so great. And you can save your chart and your friends' charts and everybody's charts, and so fun because then you can go back to them. You don't have to keep re-looking things up. But when you look at this, you want to see, okay, do I have any planets in Capricorn? Do I have any in Cancer? And honestly, those Cancers and Capricorns out there, they know that things are going down. I mean, I know a lot of Capricorns and Cancers, and not one of them isn't having some shit to go through right now.
Yeah.
Some of them really great, but always challenging, whether it's good or bad, it's a challenge. I mean, their lives are 100% changing.
And that's because these are events in the sky are happening in those signs.
Right.
Yeah.
And like I mentioned before, they're cardinal, right? So they're really good at getting things started. There are two other signs that are cardinal as well, and that's Aries and Libra. So those are that's the next tier that's being heavily affected by these eclipses. So if you have moon, a sun, or you're a rising, especially in either of those signs, Aries or Libra, you're probably having some big changes as well.
Got it.
Yeah. And so you want to look and see what house that this solar eclipse is happening in and this lunar eclipse. And so, Sydney, I have your chart. So let's look for a second.
Okay.
So the solar eclipse that's on July 2nd is in Cancer, and it's specifically at 11 degrees Cancer. And FYI, everybody, every sign has 30 degrees in it, right? Because there's 12 signs. It's a full circle. So it's 30 degrees for each sign. It's 360 degrees total. Okay. I was terrible at math, but there you go.
I had no idea that's why all of that was that way. So
there you go, right?
I'm like the mind blown emoji right now. Anyway, continue.
Makes sense.
Yes.
Okay. So at 11 degrees Cancer. So I'm looking at your chart and I'm going, okay, let me find 11 degrees Cancer. Okay, here's 11 degrees Cancer. So that's where I know the solar eclipse is happening. Now, this is big, girl, because like I said, you're a rising Cancer, right?
Right.
So that means your first house is ruled by Cancer. So this is big for you. This is big for you, faux show. And it might not be today. It might have been a week ago that you started really tapping into what's changing for you.
Yeah.
Because just FYI, guys, Mercury and Mars had some time in Cancer already about a month ago. And that's when a lot of us started seeing windows into these big shifts. Because eclipse energy, it's going over this entire July, and it started about a month ago. So all these changes and crazy things going on, it kind of is like a 2-month journey, really.
Yeah, to lead up to like the big event, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the eclipse happens, and that's when you have, you can really tap in, but the changes are still coming for sure.
Okay.
And you can still make changes. You don't need to be like, if I don't change my life on the eclipse, it's over. I lost my
No, but
window.
I like to look at it as a catalyst of sorts. Do you know what I mean? Like
it
nothing
is
happens in a
catalyst.
vacuum and it takes time. And
Good
anyway.
idea. And so for you, it's in your first house, and that's the house of identity, how you project yourself, how you carry yourself. It's your independence, your root to who you are. That's why I say it's identity. It's how you identify yourself. Like how what is your identity? How do you like to come off? How do you want to carry yourself? What do you want people to think about you when they sit down and talk with you, or they see you when you walk into a room? And so this is where you can really see a big change, or you can really feel an imbalance. So let's say you're in a relationship. A lot of the times when an eclipse happens in the first house, it shows you where your identity might be getting lost in a relationship that you're in. It can be romantic. It can be a business partnership. It can be, a friendship, anything. But you have this undeniable need to reestablish your identity, or changes will happen in your identity to you. Or, you could just be having some great new ideas. Let's say for this podcast, obviously you identify with your podcast.
Yeah.
It represents who you are. And maybe there's going to be you might have all these amazing new ideas and go, wow, my podcast is kind of shifting a little bit. And I'm more interested in these topics I wasn't even thinking about, because I really identify with these. So that's kind of an example of how it can affect you.
That's so cool. Okay. Wow. Okay. I'm going to marinate on this a little bit, because
marinate.
I have been thinking a lot about how I show up in the world anyway. That's kind of a running theme for me over the last 6 months to a year. And things are changing constantly. And I'm always getting new ideas, and I'm always sort of not rebranding, but just sort of shifting the way I present myself, the way I present the show, for example. And that makes a lot of sense. So it's really, really interesting.
Yeah. So identity is big, but it's cool. And it doesn't mean like, necessarily you've been not feeling at one with your identity or anything. I mean, you could just have a new breakthrough, like we were saying, like a whole other level. Just go to another level with it.
All right. That's cool.
Yeah. So that's where you want to look. And then for the lunar eclipse on July 16th, that is in Capricorn, and it's at 24 degrees Capricorn. Let's see for you. Where's 24? Oh, that's interesting. You have it right on the border of your 7th and 8th house. It's a little more in your 7th, but I would look at both. So the seventh house is opposite the first, which it makes sense as to why that's probably where it is. But so the seventh house is about partnerships, diplomacy, balance, which is so funny because full moons are all about figuring out balance, and you have it in the house of balance. So balancing is going to be big for you. Okay,
balance is a theme. Okay,
balance is a theme here, but that means that you really will feel, very emotional about any imbalances and any partnerships or commitments that you've made. If you're working on a project and maybe you're pulling more of the weight, or maybe you're pulling less of the weight, and you're like, oh crap, I've been a shitty partner in this department. Where are you willing to commit? There might be, there could even be a romance, It's
I
all
love
about,
the way you just said that. That's amazing.
I can't help myself.
Great.
It's about partnership, and it's keeping the peace too. This is the house of Libra. Every house is associated with a sign, which is associated with a planet. It's one big magical pattern to learn.
So cool.
But if you want to try understanding the seventh house, you could also think of Libra. If Libra is easy for you to understand, it's the same idea. It's the same idea.
So the theme is really going to be about balance
Balancing
during that
partnerships.
time. Okay.
Yeah. And it's really cool because, like I said, the solar eclipse is about new beginnings and moving forward in your life and nurturing what you want to nurture. It's very you, right?
Yeah.
And you're having it in the house of you. So for you, it's going to be really extra.
It's going to be really excellent, like a lot of exclamation points.
Lots of exclamation points, exactly.
This is so fascinating. Okay, well, thank you for sharing that. That is so cool.
Of course.
And then this is all
so
being
fun.
wrapped together with Mercury in retrograde. And so
Right. Mercury does go into retrograde before the lunar eclipse. So that's another difference between the solar and the lunar, is that
got it.
It's going to be a time of mental reflection because, okay, so here's the thing. There's going to be all this great dream supporting energy, this chutzpah going on. You're ready to go. Yet at the same time, you can have some really deep, dark fears coming up that you need to learn how to, kind of quiet or work with and figure out what you need to do to really work through these kinds of thoughts. And then you're going to have Mercury retrograding. And when Mercury retrogrades, Mercury is thoughts and communication, right? That's what it represents. When Mercury goes retrograde, it's asking you to look inward. It's asking you to shush a little bit. Don't talk as much. Start listening more, listening to yourself more, questioning how you in general have been communicating lately, and maybe how you can shift your communications or even your thoughts to work in your favor. And so the fact that this eclipse is happening when Mercury's in retrograde, and you might need to stand up for yourself during this time, and it's in Leo, so you're going to really kind of have this, it's like,
oh my gosh,
it's clashing. It's like you might really want to stand up for yourself, and it might be just a little too brash, because when you do talk during a Mercury in retrograde, if you don't stop and think before it and you just kind of explode, you'll be most likely misunderstood. You'll most likely come off differently than you intended, all that kind of stuff. So this lunar eclipse is really big on reflecting. And if you don't need to make a big change. Now, if you feel like I need to finally quit this job, or I need to finally break up with this person, and you feel this urge to do it, friggin' do it. Because we all know that it can take forever to do those kinds of things.
Totally.
So go for it. Even if maybe you'll be a little misunderstood. If you want to go for it, go for it. Just know that you might come up a little more brash. And it might not be taken so well, but sometimes things are not good. There's no good way to say certain things.
So true. And what's interesting about Mercury retrograde is I think in general, it's become something that a lot of us fear and are freaked out about. And, it ties to communication. It ties into with technology. And they always say double check that email was sent, double check you meant to send that email, double check your communication with others. Often they say, don't sign any big contracts unless you absolutely have to. But what I like to think about with Mercury retrograde is what you've shared, which is it's a time for reflection. It's a time for going within. It's a time to reassess and reevaluate. And I think it's much bigger than what people make it out to be, as this kind of fear base.
Yeah. And it's really a beautiful, beautiful time. Now, of course, if you have to sign documents, you have to do any of this stuff. Life can't stop because Mercury's in retrograde.
That's the thing. Like we can't stop living our lives too because of these events that happen, you know? So it's about learning to
three times a year, dude.
Oh my God. And there's also a shadow period before and after too, where the energy is beginning to shift and change. I told you I knew a little something. So it's about, working with the energy and not fearing it, right?
Exactly.
I feel like that's all. I'm a broken record in this recording, but it's all about working with it, knowing how to use it to your advantage and not being afraid of it.
Yeah. Look at Mercury in retrograde as an opportunity to shift your mind. Like Mercury's supporting you and helping you, and it's tapping into your brain, and it's literally slowing down communications and creating roadblocks in your favor because it wants you to stop and think and reassess.
Yeah.
With all retrogrades, it's rethink, reflect, everything, whatever that planet rules, whatever planet's in retrograde. Yeah. Everyone always only talks about Mercury in retrograde, but maybe we'll do it.
But aren't there like 5 planets going to be in retrograde total or something wild in the next month?
Yes, but those are all those slow, distant moving planets like Uranus, Neptune, Jupiter, Pluto, Saturn. And they retrograde for almost half the year. So
it's like a normal event.
Yeah, it's a normal event. That's why it's so funny when I read astrology articles like, oh my God, can you believe they are in retrograde? And it's like, yeah, because it happens all the time.
It's a thing that happens. Okay, we'll have to do another conversation.
Yeah, we might.
That talks like all about that. So we've got these 2 eclipses. We've got Mercury retrograde. We are in Cancer season. We're going to be approaching Leo season by the end of July, beginning of August. When do all of these events sort of settle down?
I know what you're saying.
Do you know what I'm saying? Like at what point do things sort of calm down a little bit with this summer season?
So this is the thing. So June was when we started getting introduced to the eclipse energy, and we started really feeling a lot of feels. There's so much going on for various other reasons. Now we have the eclipses. These are really intense, even though that beautiful solar eclipse is very positive. Then we have this lunar eclipse that's really intense.
Yeah.
And then it's kind of not getting necessarily way calmer because now we're dealing with the aftermath of everything we've learned during July, right? Mm-hmm. But what is great is that there's, Jupiter is going to go direct in Sagittarius, and that's all about expansion and confidence and going for it and kind of taking off any rose-colored glasses, but being really excited about life.
Yeah.
And it's Leo season, which is all about fun and leisure, having a good time, lots of laughs, entertaining, getting into your creative side. Mm-hmm. And Mercury's going to go direct on August 11th in Leo. So after that first week of August, those miscommunication things kind of slow down. You have a new way of thinking. You can communicate more effectively. Venus, planet of love, is going to be in Leo too. So, if you're single, you might have some more fun dating and looking at it in a lighthearted, fun kind of, you're down for romance, but you're down for romance with multiple people possibly because it's all about having fun. It's not about really getting to it. Now, of course, everybody's chart compares differently, but that's the general idea. And then by, I think it's like mid-August, Mars goes into Virgo, which helps you spend time figuring out like your details of your new routine. It's a very healing position, like where it's easy to put energy into working on healing and your health and your new routine. And I think that works so perfectly because we're really supposed to be shifting our lives during July. And when we're trying to deal with everything we've learned, it's great to have this like Leo fun energy. And at the same time, then Virgo comes in and is like, hey, I'm going to also give you energy to get your routine in line. And it's going to be new because you just had these eclipses. They probably shifted you a bit.
Wow.
So it's really nice. I mean, I'm down with it.
So we kind of got to go through the shakeup a little bit to get to the fun stuff. And, not that the shakeup can't be fun, but it's a different type of energy. This is going to be a cool summer. There's a lot. It'll be so interesting to see how it impacts and affects not only people, but systems and institutions, and things are moving, shaking, and probably for the best. But often we have to go through the fire a little bit to get to the other side. And thank you so much for doing this with me. This was so fun having you on the podcast, Lauren.
No worries.
I've got to close this out, though, by asking you the question that I ask everybody that comes on Seek the Joy podcast. What is your biggest dream?
All right. Well, surprise, surprise. We did go over my chart, right? And so being a Leo, being a rising Sagittarius in combination, and then this Scorpio moon, I'm not surprised what my big dream is at all. But I really, really, really would love to grow as an astrologer, and I would want to teach it around the world. I'd love to attend conferences and just be able to explain any aspect of astrology, whatever, specific part I end up specializing in eventually. I think it's so cool. We live in this time when spirituality is kind of on the uprise and people are becoming a little more open to it. I was like, hey, if there's a TV show, I was like, let's get a TV show going. I would love to talk about astrology.
That would be so cool.
Everywhere. And really, I really picture myself as I keep meeting other people that are into all kinds of different spiritual practices and, mindfulness and just anything from yoga to Reiki to just breath work all of it is so fascinating. Mm-hmm. I would love to eventually create my own spiritual retreat. That would be awesome. I really, really want to do that. I actually have a friend who I constantly talk to about this. It's a dream we share together. And so that I would really like to do.
That's amazing. And I really am a big believer of that. You have to speak your dreams and share them, and that really helps to bring them into existence. So I'm excited because I feel like you're just getting started, and I'm so happy we've connected. Yeah. And I can't wait to see where you go with this. Where can everybody find you, learn more, stay connected?
So I'm in the middle of creating my website. So I'm really excited about that. It'll mostly be a blog about all kinds of different astrology stuff. Amazing. But for now, I'm basically on Instagram. It's at Astro Betch, ASTROBETCH. And I'm there explaining what's going on in the sky constantly, but not too much because, like I said, I really think it's a little unhealthy to constantly be tapping into what's going on. Live your life.
Live your life, but live your life with a little help and a little guidance.
With a little bit. I keep things really simple. I have some fun with it. So if you want an astrologer to follow so you can keep up with what's going on, that can really help. And you can always DM me if you need any help looking at your own chart or just any questions you may have. Or if you want a reading, I've definitely done plenty of readings. So birth chart readings, synastry, which is about comparing two charts. Very often people will ask me to look at them and their boyfriend. And that's pretty fun to do. Wow. I can look at, what's going on in the sky compared to your chart, all kinds of stuff.
Amazing. Thank you, Lauren. This was awesome. I'm excited for eclipse season. This episode's going to drop literally the day of the solar eclipse in Cancer. So everyone that's tuned in, join the conversation on our social media pages. We are at Seek the Joy Podcast everywhere. Let us know what you thought about this one. Where is your star sign and rising sign and moon sign, and what are you feeling with these eclipses? So I'm excited to keep the conversation going.
Oh yeah.